Good morning. You have probably noticed that throughout the season of Easter, we have been reading from the Gospel of John, and in particular from the chapters that tell us the story of the Last Supper. And Jesus is giving long talks at the Last Supper. And I don't know if you realize that almost a quarter of the Gospel of John is dedicated to the Last Supper. It's a long supper. Now, today we are in chapter 17. And in chapter 17, we have what we call the great prayer of Jesus. Jesus is at the table with his disciples, and now he is praying for the community of the future disciples who would believe because of the preaching of the apostles. And that community of the future disciples, my friends, includes us. And I find it comforting to know that Jesus prayed 2,000 years ago at the Last Supper for us as we sit here today in this church at St. Patrick's. And I find it quite comforting that Jesus continues to pray for us. Have you ever thought about that? Oftentimes, when we think of Jesus and praying, we think of us praying to Jesus. However, we don't often realize that Jesus actually continues to pray for each and every one of us, as he did at the Last Supper. Now, what did Jesus pray for? John tells us, lifting up his eyes to heaven, Jesus prayed, saying, Holy Father, keep them in your name that you have given me, so that they may be one, just as we are one. So at the Last Supper, as Jesus is praying, his main concern is what? The unity among his followers, that they may be one as God the Father and Jesus is one. Now, if I were to ask you, what does Jesus want from us as his followers? Most of the people would probably respond, well, Jesus wants us to love one another, to forgive one another, certainly to help those who are less fortunate. And all of that is true. Few people would probably mention unity. That's probably not the first thing that would come to mind. It may be somewhere, closer to the bottom of the list. Yet, unity among the followers of Jesus is at the heart of Jesus' prayer. That we may be one. As the Father and Jesus is one. Now, the idea of unity is at the heart of what our nation is meant to be, the United States of America. Unity. The idea of unity is the heart of European Union, where I grew up. To be a union united by the same purpose. The idea of unity is also at the heart of United Nations. To be united for the betterment of the world. To be united to preserve peace in the world. So unity is not just essential to religious tradition. Unity is also essential in our secular world. So it seems to me that the unity is at the heart of today's message. Now, a famous theologian, Saint Thomas Aquinas, who lived in the Middle Ages, says that the opposite of unity is division. And he adds that where there is division, there is always a sin. Behind every division in the society, in the world, there is always some kind of sin. It may be jealousy, it may be greed, it may be pride, it may be hatred. But there is always a sin behind a division. Notice that division is never a result of goodness. Jesus knew that if the community of his followers is to survive and thrive and to carry on the message of the gospel, that they have to be united as one body. Yet we of course realize, that unity can be difficult to achieve. We experience unity in the world today, in churches, in society, maybe even in our families. And we recognize the negative consequences of such divisions. Again, division is never a result of love. Unity is. I can't say, I love, therefore I divide, or sow disharmony, or sow discord. But what I can tell and say is, I love, therefore I seek unity. I seek peace. I seek harmony in this world. A famous astronaut, Frank Borman, speaking from the moon. When you get to the moon, you get a perspective. Speaking from the moon, he said this: we are one hunk of ground, water, air, clouds, floating in space. From here, it really is one world. From here, it really is one world. That's what I would call the Jesus perspective. That's the Jesus outlook. That's what Jesus calls us to be. And that's what he is praying for, that we may be one as his followers, that we may strive for unity, harmony, and peace wherever we are. So maybe this week, just say a prayer for unity. Maybe there is a unity that's needed in your family or somebody else's family. maybe unity in a community or the world or workplace, whatever it is. Let's this week intentionally do what Jesus did at the Last Supper. Let's say a prayer this week for unity, that they may be one.